All right. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending our session today. My name is Elizabeth Lawn. I'm an immigration lawyer in Toronto. And we have with us today Dave Gupta and Mingho Lee from CIBC, who are going to be talking with you about your banking needs today. So here's how it's going to work today. I will be presenting first on how international workers, you can extend your work permits in Canada and get permanent residence. And then Dave and Mingho will be presenting on banking solutions and financial planning for you guys. So let's talk about solutions for workers. The first thing I want to do is kind of go through a little bit of a chart to kind of go over, now these aren't all of the work permits that are available, but these are some of the most common kinds of work permits that are available. And you'll see that there are two different levels usually when we're talking about work permits. There are the open work permits where you can work for anyone, and I've listed the open work permits there. The most popular is the Postgrad work permit. Spouses of students and high-skilled workers can also get open work permits. International experience class, if you're younger and you are from a certain country that has an agreement with Canada, you can get an open work permit for a limited period of time. We have a new Hong Kong open work permit that just came out a few weeks ago for those people who have at least a degree or a 2-year college diploma or program that you've gained it in the last 5 years if you're a Hong Kong passport holder. And then we have bridging work permits, where if you have received your permanent residence approval to a certain degree, you don't have the final permanent residence approval yet, but you've gone past a certain stage, then you can apply for a bridging work permit to allow you to work in Canada until your permanent residence is issued. So these are the open work permits. Then we have the employer-specific work permit. So with the open work permits, you can work for anyone you like. But with the employer-specific work permits, you have to work for the employer that is specified on your work permit. And really, there are two main branches of the employer-specific work permits. There are the LMIAs, the labor market impact assessments, where we have to go and get an approval at Service Canada or ESTC, and that's the Labor Department first before you can apply for a work permit. Or it's the International Mobility Program, the IMP programs, where we can directly apply for the work permits. And with the LMIA, you have the regular stream, and then there's also a stream called the Global Talent Stream, and those mainly are for tech workers, but also for other employees, specialized employees of high-tech or innovative companies. Then there are, for the IMPs, there's a whole bunch, and I certainly have not listed all of them here. But some of the more common ones we use are the intra-company transferee categories, where you're transferred from an overseas company to come to Canada. Free trade agreements. This is one of my favorite kind of work permits. Those are the ones where if you're a national of a certain country and you're professional from that country, you may be able to come to Canada because of free trade agreement. For example, we have the most commonly, the most well-known is the Nafta free trade agreement, where now it's called CUSMA since Trump came, they renegotiated that. So if you're Mexican or a US citizen, you can, if you're a professional, you don't have to go through LMIA. There's certain listed professions where you can apply directly to come to Canada. But we have free trade agreements, some of them much better than that one, with other countries. For example, Colombia, Peru, Chile, the European Union, Australia, Japan, Vietnam, So different kinds of countries, if you're national, if you're lucky enough to be a national of that country and you're a professional from that country, we may be able to get you a work permit without an LMIA if you have a job offer. All of these employer-specific work permits require a job offer. We also have francophone. So if you can, you're fluent in French, we can get you, and you have a job offer that is a high-skilled job offer outside of Quebec, we can get you a work permit there. Entrepreneur work permits, if you're going to start a business in Canada, we may be able to get you a work permit. Provincial nominee programs, these are ones where you have a job offer in a province, you've received provincial nomination, we can get you a work permit if your current work permit is going to expire. Also, the final one that we sometimes do is for significant benefit. These are for those, for example, who will bring a significant benefit to Canada. We can't get you a work permit under other categories. LMIA is not suitable, but we can show you're going to bring significant benefit to Canada. We may be able to get you a work permit under that. Okay. So I just want to give you a few tips for those of you who are in Canada and your work permit is about to expire. I just wanted to make sure that you understand what you need to do in order to stay in status. Staying in status is probably one of the most important things that you need to do if you have temporary status in Canada. If you are out of status, you are not allowed to work legally in Canada, and this could create a major hurdle for you to get permanent residence in the long run. So the first thing that you need to understand is implied status. Implied status happens when your current work permit is about to expire. If you file an extension of your work permit before it expires, then you have the legal right to continue to work based on the first work permit, not based on the new work permit that you want to apply for, but based on the first work permit, you have the legal right to continue to work until a decision is made. So let's say my work permit, and I have a work permit that is a LMIA based work permit, is going to expire on March 31st. Now, the IRCC website may say, oh, you should file it 30 days before. That's a recommendation. That is not the law. As long as I file the application before my work permit expires, let's say I file it on March 30th, okay? And a decision is not made for another 2 months. Let's say a decision is made on May 30th. I can continue to work for my current employer based on the current conditions of the work permit until a decision is made. So if I have the LMIA and I have I want to apply for a bridging work permit, which is an open work permit, I can't start working under the open work permit. I can't go and work for another employer, for example, until the new work permit is issued. However, I can continue to work under the old work permit until the new work permit is issued. That's called implied status. Now, sometimes people will say, well, you know what? My LMIA is not even processed yet. Okay, I can't apply for the work permit because I won't qualify for it. You could submit your work permit before it expires, even if you don't have an LMIA issued. Now, you will have implied status until a decision is made. Let's say in 60 days, the officer, within that 60 days, you get the LMIA and the officer has not looked at your application yet. Then you can update your application and you can tell the officer, hey, wait a minute, now I have the LMIA. And the officer will usually then give you the work permit and you can continue on and have implied status. But what if when the officer gets to your application, you don't have the LMIA yet and the officer rejects your application? Well, if that happens, then you have normally 90 days to file a restoration of status. Now, because of COVID, the government has actually extended that time by a lot. So if you've lost your status after January 30th last year, you have until August 31st of this year to file a restoration of status. So that's your second chance. If you lost your status in Canada, you don't necessarily have to leave Canada. You can file the restoration status if you're within restoration period. However, while you are on restoration, you are not, it's not the same as implied status. You do not have the legal right to work, okay? So let's say, my work permit was rejected. I will file the restoration of status. It might be issued in 60 days, for example. So during that 60 days, I cannot work. But once I get the new work permit, then I can work. One last thing is make sure you have evidence that the application was submitted. There are often glitches. I mean, online is a lot better than mail because mail has been really sometimes very unreliable, but still there have been online glitches. So make sure that after the application is submitted, you have evidence of it. Now, IRCC is supposed to give you a letter saying that confirming that your application was submitted. And they will also now issue a letter for your employer saying that you have implied status. If you don't, it doesn't mean that it hasn't been submitted. If it's online on the online portal, there will be a confirmation on the online portal that the application was submitted, and that is enough as well to show that you have implied status. Okay. Now, if you have you don't submit it online, you're going to send it by mail. Make sure you use a courier. Do not trust regular mail and Canada Post. Things get lost all of the time. And you have to keep the evidence that the package arrived. So, once the courier notifies you that the package was signed for and it arrived, keep that as evidence that your application was submitted. Also, always keep a complete copy of everything that you submitted. And especially important to show that your application was submitted is to show the forms that you've submitted and signed and the fee receipt that you have paid the right fees. If you don't submit the right forms, you don't pay the right fees, then it's as if your application was never submitted. And then you don't have implied status at all. Okay? All right. Now, I just wanted to run through a couple of scenarios with you about extending your work permit. We have a lot of students who often say, well, my postgrad work permit is going to expire. How do I get another work permit? So first of all, the government has, usually you can only get one postgrad work permit in your life. You can't get another one. But recently, the government has said they're going to allow those who have postgrad work permits that are going to expire before July 27th to apply to extend for 18 months. Okay, so so basically how it's you have to apply within your 4 months of your work permit expiry. So if your work permit is going to expire by November 27th, that's the cutoff date for you to file the extension for your work permit. The bridging work permit is something. So one of the main things I work with if someone is on their postgrad work permit is trying to make sure either they can get their permanent residence before their work permit expires, which is the best case scenario. But if they can't and they have received, for example, an invitation to apply for express entry and they've submitted the application, then we can apply for a bridging work permit. Or, for example, if they are applying under provincial nomination and you've received a provincial nomination certificate, then you can apply for the bridging work permit as well. Okay, so that's something there. Other than that, we are stuck with, maneuvering, trying to get someone who is able to fit under one of the other categories for the work permits, and that may not be that easy for someone who does not have that much work experience, or especially specialized work experience. The LMIA is something where an employer would have to advertise and show they can find a Canadian to do the job, unless they were to go through the global talent stream. But that is only for certain occupations for the most part, the tech occupations. There are other things. For example, if someone is from a free trade country and they have a professional experience, or they qualify under one of the professional categories, or if they speak French, etc. Entrepreneurs, if people are going to start their business, that might be something that we could look at. There are also other regional programs like the Atlantic Immigration Pilot Program or the Rural and Northern Immigrant Pilot Program, but these require someone to have a job offer from a employer that is approved in one of those communities. Okay. If you're on an employer-specific work permit and you want to move, you want to go to another employer, one of the easier things to do is if you've submitted your permanent residence and you get a bridging work permit. Now, the bridging work permits you can only apply for within 4 months of expiry for your current work permit. So if you have a work permit that is good for 2 years, even if you get to a certain stage for your permanent residence and it doesn't expire in 2 years, you won't be able to apply for the bridging work permit. Okay, so that's one of the things about that. LMI, otherwise, you're looking at LMIAs, free trade, francophone, other ways for you to get a work permit. It may not be that easy. You will have to get the employer support. It may be possible. So come and talk to me if this is something that you want to do. It will require some planning and to make sure that your new employer is on board. All right. So I just wanted to go over some possibilities for permanent residence. We're looking at express entry. Express entry, most people will have heard about it, and here's how it goes. You first have to create an online profile where you qualify under one of 3 categories: Federal Skilled Worker Class, Canadian Experience Class, Federal Skilled Trades Class. You're in the pool, but just because you're in the pool doesn't mean that you can get out. You'll get a series of points based on your background, and if you have provincial nomination, and then you'll get an invitation to apply if your points are high enough and the government invites you to apply. So, how do you get into the pool? There are 3 categories to get into the pool. The Federal Skilled Worker Class, you don't need to have Canadian experience. If you have work experience outside of the country, you could get in. The Canadian Experience Class requires you to get 1 year of high-skilled work experience in Canada that is where you are employed, not self-employed, employed in Canada. Okay, it doesn't have to be continuous, doesn't have to be in the same occupation, but it does have to be high-skilled, employed 1 year, and it has to be at least 1,560 hours, which on average would be 30 hours per week for 52 weeks. Okay, so there's been a lot of talk about the Canadian Experience Class, because during COVID, it used to be that, the Canadian government would just invite everybody in the pool, and whoever has the highest points would get an invitation to apply. But recently, the government has really emphasized during COVID Canadian Experience Class, and many of you might have heard that they had a humongous draw a few weeks ago where they invited everybody in the pool who was under the Canadian Experience Class to apply. There was just another draw today, just a few minutes ago, actually, where the government invited those under the Canadian Experience Class again only with 441. So the points for the Canadian Experience Class is pretty much lower than it would be for everybody else. Prior to this year, they haven't really done much with with everybody, but last year they were drawn at around the high 460s and low 470s for everybody else. Okay, so that's the reason why the points are going up or down. It depends on who is in the pool and how how many the government wants to draw, right? So they draw the top and also the category that you belong to. So how do you get your points? The first thing that that is looked at is your age. After your 30s, every birthday is no longer a happy birthday. During your 30s, the points go down 5 or 6 points. 40s, fast slide down, minus 10 points, minus 11 points. By the time you're 45, the good news is it doesn't go down anymore. The bad news is it's a 0. Okay, so not a lot you can do about that except apply, when you can. Okay. The other thing is education. Education, we're looking at 2 degrees if you don't have Canadian work experience to get, high enough. Language is one of the biggest cutoffs. So it really does make a difference. Make sure you are studying for the Ielts. And if you can't get that high, then we do need to look at a plan. Okay. Canadian work experience. This is the work experience that you will get. That is almost the same as the Canadian work experience I explained for the Canadian experience class. It's instead of 3 years, it's within the last 10 years to qualify. Foreign work experience as well. If you have foreign work experience within the last 10 years, that's high skilled, we can use that. Spouse, they may add a few points, but most of the points belong to the principal applicant. If you have provincial nominee program, that will get some points, previous study in Canada, and arranged employment. So this is only for those people who have employer-specific work permits or LMIAs. If you have an employer-specific work permit and you've worked for at least 1 year, then like under the International Mobility Program, you can get either 50 points for specialized workers, high-skilled workers, or 200 points if you're executive management. If you have an LMIA, you don't need the work experience to get the arranged employment points. If you have siblings who are Canadians or permanent residents, you get some points. Fluent French ability, that is another one. French, if you can speak French, you're going to be very lucky because there are going to be a lot of pathways open for you. And trade certification. Now, I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to breeze through the next few slides. There are some options for people who can't get the points that are needed for express entry. The OIMP, which is Ontario's Provincial Nominee Program, has some added on categories where if you are in the pool, you may receive, the optional is may, okay? You may receive an expression of interest where you can apply with them for 600 points. And these are for people in specific occupations that they're often inviting, like if you're in the tech draws, or if you're in the trades, you have 1 year of work experience in Ontario in one of the construction trades that they've identified, or if you have very high French speaking, French fluency, okay? But they're still looking at how many points you have as well. But this is something that could be of help. There are other programs that are not express entry based. In Provincial Nominee Program, OIMP, one of the main things is you do have to have a job offer with an employer who's willing to support you in the application. To qualify, the employer has to show that if they're inside the GTA, they have a gross income of $1 million, at least 5 full-time Canadian or permanent resident employees, and they're in business for 3 years. If your employer is outside of the GTA, the gross income it has to be around 500, over 500,000. They have to have at least 3 full-time permanent resident or Canadian employees and be in business for 3 years. The job offer has to be permanent. It can't be on a contract, and it has to be at least 30 hours a week. Now, if you're an international student, you don't need to have any work experience. The salary can just meet entry wage as long as you're applying within 2 years of graduation. It has to be at least a 2-year program. If it's a 1-year program, it has to be something that where your program requires everyone to have a degree, only a degree, not a degree or work experience or a degree or diploma, only a degree as a prerequisite. Okay. Now, if you are a skilled worker and you have 2 years of work experience in the last 5 years in the occupation where you have been offered a job and your salary meets median wage, then this is something that you could also apply for. And finally, there's an in demand for lower skilled work if they have 9 months of work experience in Ontario. There is going to be a new system in place for all of these. So they are going to add a layer, because before there were too many people who were applying under these categories, and it was kind of like buying tickets on Ticketmaster. As soon as these programs opened, they'd be open for like 15 minutes and then they'd be closed. And it was kind of unfair because it was only for like people who had really high speed internet, who might have a chance to get in. So what the government is doing is they're going to do something similar to Express Entry. The points are going to be a little bit different in the way that they're weighted. For example, it doesn't look like they're going to look at age as a factor, but they're going to, everybody who qualifies, you go through that system first, a screening system first, and then you can apply. Now, this system is not in place yet. We don't know the exact criteria yet for this system. But what we'll do is I'm going to have you guys who registered be on our list for the newsletter. And we will send out, when the new news comes out, we will be sending out news about that. Okay. Quickly, startup visa is something, if you guys are entrepreneurial at all, this is a permanent resident program, and you can also get a work permit while waiting for the permanent residence to work in Canada while waiting for the permanent residence. But it does require you guys, if you're going to start a business in Canada, it should be innovative, and it needs to get a letter of support from an incubator or angel investor group. Okay, if this is something that you guys are interested in, do let me know. It is a very good program for people who fit within this. Next steps, have a plan. If anything that you take away from my presentation today is there are different kinds of paths, different kind of options, and not everybody, there is no one size fits all, okay? You have to have a plan how to get to your own personal immigration goals. And you gotta be prepared to do what you need to do to get there, right? Maybe you need to study for your Ielts. Maybe you need to find another employer. Maybe you need to, work for a while. Whatever it is, make sure you have the determination to get there, because it's often not an easy road. But once you do get there, hopefully it'll be worth it. Also, I want to emphasize, do not misrepresent. Do not take the temptation to misrepresent anything. If you do and you are found out, the consequences, the penalties are very, very, they're very, very high. You could be barred from Canada for 5 years. You could have your status stripped. Even if you get your permanent residence in the end, you could have that taken away if they ever found out. So you don't get a real good night's sleep like that, right? A lot of you, if you're working in Canada, there are very good paths, legitimate paths for you to get there. Just make sure you stay on that path and stay in status as much as you can in Canada. If your application is rejected, don't wait. You have to contact a lawyer right away. Don't trust the IRCC call center and say, oh, what should I do? They will tell you all sorts of things and they will make you waste your time. There are very strict federal court notice periods, 15 days if your application is filed in Canada to ask for judicial review, 60 days if it's outside of Canada. If you don't file the notice within that period of time, and even if you feel it was unfair, you could have lost your opportunity to go to court. And even with the IRCC, let's say you just call the call center and they say, go and write a letter. You can write a letter, but this is going to be your only chance to ask for reconsideration. And if you don't know what to write, the officer rejects your application. Going to a lawyer afterwards means that you can't file another reconsideration because you can only do it at one time. Okay? So anyway, I've talked a lot today, and I do want to get to the banking solutions, which I'm sure a lot of you, this is the reason why you're here. This is my contact information, and if you have any questions, please do let us know, and let me know that you've come to a webinar, and we'll give you a discounted consultation rate as well. Okay? Let's see, do we have any questions, Dave? Let's see here. Okay, so someone has asked, for the free trade agreement, if an individual has graduated from a USA school but not a US citizen, no, you have to be a national of that to qualify under the new CUSMA agreement. Some of the other countries like Peru, for example, you're a permanent resident, you can also qualify. For the most part, you have to be a citizen of that country to qualify. Another person said, do you know whether the implied status would apply to refugee claimants? Okay, so yes, the implied status should apply to a work permit that a refugee claimant has. The work permit does not give you status for a refugee claimant, but it does allow you to work. So if you applied for the work permit before it expired, that provision still should apply to you to allow you to work. Okay. One more. What is the minimum value worth for a company for a startup visa? There is actually no minimum value that a startup visa company has to have. There are fees that a lot of the incubators or the angel investors, they may want to see that you've capitalized your company to a certain level, but there is actually no minimum level that the startup visa itself requires. Let's see, what else? After entering the express entry pool, can I apply for the OIMP stream? Yes, absolutely. First of all, if you've entered into the pool, you haven't actually submitted anything at all yet. You're just entering into the pool. And even if you've submitted, even if you've received the invitation to apply, you can actually, and you've applied, you can actually apply for another stream as well. You can only get one permanent residence in your life, but you can do 2 different paths to get there. All right, guys, I think I've talked long enough.
No, I think, Elizabeth, there's one more question. If you see that, it is about trust transfer. How long does it, do you see the question? How long does a wire transfer typically take to arrive in a trust account here from Shanghai? So I have a buyer client who sent a deposit by wire transfer to Harvey Callis on Monday, but it hasn't been received yet. Thank you.
That I have no idea. That's something that is not something that I would deal with. Do you guys have any ideas?
It would be, it's very difficult to definitive answer that question. This is between 2 different banks. So I would really go back to maybe the trust company holder and see where it is held up. And that should be the way to go. The other question is, after graduation, when can I apply for PGWP, and can I leave Canada after applying it for a short time?
So when should you apply for postgrad work? That's a very good question. My rule is generally you should apply within 90 days of when you first receive notification that you have completed your program, the earliest of the 90 days, or if your study permit has expired. If you go to the website, it'll say 180 days, but if you apply with that time period, your application will likely be rejected because you lose your student status within 90 days of you stop studying. So if you apply after the 90 days, you have to file an extension of your study permit or restoration in addition to your postgrad work permit, and you cannot work while waiting for your postgrad work permit. So the rule that I would suggest that you guys think about in your head is when your study permit expires or 90 days, whichever comes first. And if you apply then and you stay in the country, you can start working while waiting for your postgrad work permit. Can you leave Canada after applying for it for a short period of time? That it depends on the individual circumstances. That you have to be very careful, especially right now because of COVID. Coming back to the country could be an issue. Okay.
We have one more question, Elizabeth. I have an express entry profile, but my IELTS tests expire sometime in April. Do I need to retake my IELTS?
So your results are locked in when you submit your application after you receive an ITA. If you can't submit your application, if you don't have an ITA yet, probably would be good to redo your IELTS. All right.
Lots of questions. Good.
Great questions.
So thank you everyone for joining in. That was a lot of information. Elizabeth, thank you. You really, I was taking notes and learning to even help my friends and people I know and a lot of clients as well. So a tremendous amount of information. Thank you. And I can really understand that, for someone who is dealing with this on a personal level, they have so many different priorities. And I think the banking part of it is a excellent mix or an attachment to your presentation. It really is very logical for the simple reason that some of the things that you mentioned are so important, like, how the entry system is based on age, education, right? Really life stages of different life ways. And that's what all banking and financial is all about. So today, what we really want to cover is not just I'm sure some of you are already in Canada, are familiar with the banking, how it works, what CIBC is. So really to give you more of an overall picture as to what to keep your eyes on, because as you're dealing with the whole immigration process, there are so many unknowns. Maybe you're busy acquiring a new skill, employment, all of that. And same, I can say this from my personal experience that even when we came in, for many years, we didn't take up government, offers or bonds or grants. We ignored them for not knowingly, but just because we were busy doing so many things. A change, this is a huge change, especially doing that as an adult with a family. It is a lot to take in. But this is also very timely that you all took the initiative to actually come and attend this. So you're cognizant or at least aware of all the different things that you can take advantage of. So in today, something anybody coming into Canada as a new immigrant, a couple of things that'll really sort of stand out is opening your first account. I'm sure most of you are already familiar with that, so we wouldn't spend too much time on that. The next 2 points, building your credit, which is really, really important, because some of the countries that we have come from, I know personally, credit wasn't a big deal when we came, right? I mean, it was a net new here because here everything is so much systematically logged. So you get to be aware of that. But that and the home owner as a first-time homeowner in Canada, those two I would let my colleague Mino talk to more in details. He's the expert on that. My area would be really to talk about savings and also to touch upon if you are already an existing CIBC client, then you know what benefits and facilities there are. But if not, and if you're considering CIBC, we do have a very robust welcome package that you can enjoy and take advantage of. So again, to for those who are net new into CIBC or sort of considering it, we are one of Canada's 5 major banks. One of the some of the features which really would add value to your banking would be CIBC's global money transfer. So there's no fees to it. If you're still supporting some family member back home, this is something you can consider. We have a strong network of branches across Canada. So depending on, maybe you start in Ontario, but you end up moving to a different province, you don't have to uproot your banking. It's seamless. You can simply go from one to the other as if nothing changed. So that's something to keep in mind. Most of you are very familiar, I'm sure, with mobile online banking, very seamless experience there. And the CIBC banking package. Again, not to get into the specifics of the banking package per se, but what I will do is I'll leave you all with the website, which I find it very, very informative. It's called newcomers.cibc.com. It is a truly a holistic platform, and you can sort of choose where you are. Maybe you're considering coming into Canada, then you can look at the information that's relevant to you. If you're already here and then you are settled down and you are sort of looking at the next phase. So there are 3 ways to navigate that website. I would attach it to my favorites on my computer, really look at it. It's not just banking information. It has a lot of information that will come handy instead of you having to, really look up other places for that same information. On the banking side, again, very simple, but just because if you all are looking at our website for checking accounts, our checking accounts are called smart accounts. They are tiered. So as a part of the banking package for newcomers, for this basic, the startup bank account is free of charge for the first year. Same applies for if you apply for a Visa card. If you are living in a rented accommodation, sometimes you have passports, documents, etc., that you may want to safekeep. We do offer fee waiver on a safety deposit box at your, you can definitely contact your local branch for that and see availability. On the saving account side, I personally have found that the most popular saving account, we do offer few of them, but the most popular one that I like is called the E-Advantage saving account. There are no fees associated with it. It's very easy to navigate money within CIBC with that. With the checking account, couple of things to sort of know, and I'm sure you all are familiar with all of this, but just to sort of revisit it, that money deposited, you have instant access to it, which is great. You can set up direct deposits. So one of the ways, of course, the first direct deposit that comes to our mind if you're working is your paycheck, right? So you want access to that money right away. And you don't want to have a check and deposit it. So direct deposit is a great way to do that. And sign up for, or if you want to set up the Government of Canada payments like Canada Child Benefit. I remember when we came in, my kid was small, and then we actually didn't set this up for a long, long time. I don't know, for some reason or the other, we didn't. But finally, when we did set it up, it's seamless. The money comes into your account. You don't have to disturb it, and it's there for availability. So really good for that. On the pre-authorized side, and I think Mino will sort of second me on this, is that we all have good intention of paying our bills and utility bills and Visa cards on time, but life happens. We forget, and we catch up, or maybe we pay it on a Friday, and then the receiving company receives it on Monday or Tuesday. So there is a kind of lag, and because all the credit bureau is tracking all that, over time it builds up and negatively impacts your credit bureau. So one of the ways to navigate that would be to set up pre-authorized debits, whether to pay the minimum or pay it off completely. And I would say initially, if you're starting out with a fresh slate, you're really starting up a new life in Canada, it's always best to be the best looking. Then you don't have any catch up to play with. You're already ahead of what you want to do. On the other side, so now let's look at saving. And one of the ways to look at saving is that uh, we all want to save. We human beings we've had our parents always teach us about saving. It's a very it's a quality that we all have and enjoy. But then life happens, right? We get busy, we are dealing with immigration, so many different ways, acquiring new skills. There's so much that happens that savings automatically goes into the back burner. And we don't have enough time to really look at it. But when you're starting with a saving strategy of any kind, and if some of you are working already and getting a paycheck, you may be saving without sort of realizing it or looking at it. You could be contributing into a federal CPP program for your pension for the future. You could be contributing into your employer's pension plans, which again, you may be not seeing it all the time because we get the paychecks as a net of all of that. You could be contributing into EI or employee insurance programs. But beside the ones that sort of get taken off from our paycheck right before we even see it, uh, because Canada has a graduated or a progressive taxation system, that means the more you earn, the more taxes you pay. Any saving strategy. So I am a personal financial planner by profession. So any saving strategy that we would recommend would sort of factor in the tax saving side of it. So if we are just doing saving for the purpose of saving, that's one way of looking at it. But if we can add another feature to it, that means, and say this is the tax saving as well, then it's a win-win situation. So within the tax-free saving account, the first one that sort of comes up is the registered retirement saving plan. So the registered retirement saving plan is an incentive the government gives us to set aside money during our maximum earning years, which is when we are working, and to sort of pay for our personal retirement incomes down the road. Now, having said that, they incentivize it by saying that because it has a graduated income tax, that whatever amount you put in, you really don't pay taxes for that time during that year. So it's an excellent tool to have. And some of our financial input we get sometimes are from friends or family or people who have been here longer. And again, keep in mind that they are not financial advisors. They might have a experience of their own. They have their own opinion. But always work with a financial planner, just the way Elizabeth had mentioned that, if you're looking at if you're very serious about your immigration journey, work with a robust plan. And that's the same thing that applies on the saving side as well. Like work with an advisor. We see close to maybe 200 to 300 clients of various life stages. So we have a much higher level of experience just from the exposure. So take advantage of that. If you want to meet with me, my role is completely mobile. So you can literally reach me at any time during the day or the week. And we can discuss and see something which is unique, which makes sense for you. So registered retirement saving plan is something you can definitely consider. It will be helpful. The second one is for registered education saving plan. It doesn't save you tax right away, but it does the money within those registered education saving plan, which is basically meant for the education cost to meet the cost of education for the children after high school. It's a big unknown because this expense can happen maybe 10 to 12 years ahead of time ahead, and we don't know what we are going to deal with, what numbers, right? I mean, when we paid for our universities and schools, there was a different price point, but things have moved so much. It has become so much. So how do you plan for that? The second part of that is the RESP. That's what it's more popularly called, is that it attracts government grants and bond monies. So which is literally free money that you can get for your contributions, which is very, very robust. Again, I've seen a lot of parents delay going into this program. You don't have to go with a lot of money into it, but definitely start it up as long as you have received the child's social insurance number. It is a great program to start with. Another program that doesn't get too much attention, and I've had clients who have been in Canada as well for a long time, and I thought I'll mention that, is the Rdsp. It's a registered disability saving plan. It's one of the government of Canada's one of the best programs. It's not highly advertised. It is meant for people with disability the incentive that the government gives in terms of matching contributions is tremendous. So for the first $500 that gets contributed into that person's account, the government matches $3 per dollar, and then the additional 1,000, any other amount over that 500 attracts $2 for every dollar that you contribute. It has a year lifetime amount that you can put is $200,000, and the government grants started at the appropriate time would be approximately $70,000. So really the RDSP, and I've had clients who've been in Canada who have some family member who may be getting the disability tax credit, but haven't taken advantage of it. And that $270,000 invested appropriately over the lifetime of that person would be a tremendous way or source to really help with that. So keep that in mind. Again, there's a ton of information. If you have any questions, just send me an email. And the last but not the least is the tax-free saving account. This is something that came up in 2009. Any growth, so the money that goes into tax-free saving account is post-tax dollars. That means you have already paid taxes on it. So the CRA or the Canada Revenue Agency has no interest in it, but any growth on those monies are not taxable. And unlike the registered retirement plan, which is really pegged for the retirement, Mino, of course, will disagree and say you can use that for the first-time home buyer plan. But the TFSA money, honestly, you can use it for anything. You can use it for a vacation. You can use it to, finance, to bring someone to visit you here, or to pay for some home or renovation back home. All of that. So it's a very flexible saving platform, and any growth in that is tax saved. So all of these information is available. This is the website that I was mentioning. It has different language that it applies. So it's called the newcomer.cibc.com. Visit it. If you have any questions, by all means, reach out to me. Even it doesn't have to be, though I am based in Toronto, but because my role is mobile, you can pretty much reach out to me for any part of Canada. And I'll make sure that when I'm booking an appointment for you, we've had a conversation. I've told the person you are meeting at the branch what our expectations are. We really sort of review everything as a financial plan. So with that, I'll pause. I'll hand it over to Mino, who's going to go over some of the credit products, how to build your credit, how to look for your first home. And again, if you all have any questions, just send it over right now. Over to you, Mino.
Yep. First one is the newcomer. So I'm actually mortgage advisor CIBC, as people see my profile. So one of the things that I'll definitely get always answered is how can I purchase the home in Canada? So obviously, unless you have a full cash or you have a available money in a saving account to purchase property without the loan, then obviously you do not need our help. So you can just work with the realtors and purchase the property. However, if you do need a finance, such as called mortgages or secure line of credit, and even in this case, we need to qualify based on the government regulation called stress test. And the stress test is solely based on your incomes, special Canadian income. And if you have like a foreign income, you still have an income from overseas, which is your home country. And we do have a special program for newcomer program and high value program. All those are based on case by case. So people do get a lot of exceptions to get the mortgage to purchasing home. So, but just one thing in your mind is that when you purchasing the property with those special program, it requires a 35% down payment or more. So if you're looking for using government program to buying home with a 5% and 10% down payment, sadly, you have to follow the same rule as any other Canadians. So in this case, I highly recommend people to get a job in Canada first. And meanwhile, actually, this is off the topic on the mortgage and homeowners, but I see there's a question coming in on Q&A. There's one client asking about the credit card if you paid on the deadline, actual deadlines. And if you use a CIBC credit card and you're paying through the CIBC account, there's no impact because it will process instantly. But if you using other bank account for other bank credit cards, then what happens is that it's not going to process immediately. But most of the company has grace period, so that you should be okay. And I done that to myself. I never get any issue on my credit bureaus. So it sounds like off the topic, but I want to just discuss on this video because the credit is very important. Because if your credit is not good, then the bank will not review your loan applications. So in this case, I highly recommend people to maintain your credit with good standing by paying up your dues on deadlines. So that was actually a very good question. That's why I want to just step over and move on. And if you have any other questions, just like you can call me directly or email me directly, then I can answer those questions because a lot of them is basically case by case. So, and then I just want to give you a rough idea how regular Canadian gets the mortgage if you're trying to make a less down payment to purchase the home. And in this case, the general idea that we tell our real estate agent is that if your client's looking for mortgage to purchase home, usually we can offer the mortgage amount from their annual income based on the annual income 4 to 5 times. So those are the just rough guideline that we draw it to the real estate agents. So that might be your starting point to when you shop around. And Dave, do you have anything to add, or do you have any question to add to these presentations?
I actually have a question.
Yes.
Why is it so important to have good credit history?
Yes. The first thing is that bank do not know what type of your personality on the paying back your loans. So every loan application will pull the credit bureau, and there's a main credit bureau companies, basically Equifax and TransUnion. So they're actually track down your liabilities. So they track down what is your limit, what is your balance, and what is your monthly or frequency of the payment, and how many times you missed the payment, or how many times you did pay on time. So they look at those, especially when it comes to mortgage, and that mortgage is a very big loans. Usually it's hundreds of $1,000s in Toronto and Vancouver. So since it's too big, they become very sensitive about your history. So if you have a tendency that miss the payment by a few days every single moment, and your lender or liability companies, they report that you do have that kind of habit, then the bank will consider that fact and might give you disadvantage. But it's not negative thing, because if you paid off your all those payment on time, this is actually positive stuff that it help you to get a loans. So especially for A lenders, what we see on like CIBC, BMO, RBC, which is typical bank that you're looking at, they're looking for a very good credit rating when it comes to loan, because we are not B lenders or monoline lenders. So that we're looking for a client who has a very good credit and good income, obviously, newcomers too, because newcomers you're starting. So we wanted to work with you to how to settle in Canada. So we do make a lot of exceptions. So I guess the other thing that I did mention here is that for newcomers, we don't see the history that much. We always make an exception that you do not have a credit history. So that's not actually negative on our applications. For regular Canadian, it's actually negative, because we get a lot of questions saying that, well, you've been living in here, Canada, for 15 years and 20 years, you don't have any credit history. And that actually is a big issue for regular Canadians. But if you're new immigrants, we don't see that at all, because we say that, well, you're newcomer, so obviously that's common sense that you have no credit history. So I'm not sure that's the good answer that you're asking, but if you anything missing, just let me know.
That's great. So if I'm a newcomer and I don't have a credit history in Canada, what do I need to show in order to convince the bank that I'm a good person for you guys to lend to?
Yeah, so if you talk about actual big loans like mortgages and line of credit, then if it's absolutely none, then we need to see something. We need to see any like condo fee or any rent payment as a tenant. If you have anything else that show your history on your bank statement that you made a good payment, that's good enough. That's where someone has absolutely none. But if you even have 1 or 2 credit card, that's good enough to move on for us.
Okay, so it is something where, you know, if someone's coming to the country, getting a credit card here, you know, having bills and such and paying them off, that's a good thing to have in order to start building a credit history if they want to buy a house later on. Is that right?
Yes. So usually what I recommend is just have a 1 or 2 credit card at minimum,
Okay.
at least, because you probably need actually at least one credit card to paying the gas at the gas stations and your grocery stores. So at least have one credit card or 1 or 2. Then you're able to show your credit history. Then we don't have to go through the exceptions showing that how you pay the rent or how you pay your cell phone bills and stuff that as an exception. So that will really help us to process the applications.
Okay, that's great. And Dave, speaking of credit cards and opening up bank accounts, if a newcomer comes to Canada and let's say they're interested in the newcomer program, what do they need to have in terms if they wanted to get one of these credit cards or open up an account?
Great question. So, Elizabeth, basically, I think they will just need to come in with their government issued IDs. So that means the passport come in, and if they have their landing papers, they come into the branch, and I would recommend coming in first time in person to open that. I know the website does allow us to open things online, but it's not that robust, not just for us, for everyone. So just for the better experience, I would say most of the branches are open now to book the appointment, come in and bring the IDs, and definitely we can open that. When you're opening, and that's why sort of I mentioned that, you know, because within my role, it is mobile in nature, and you all have taken the initiative to actually come into this webinar and have our information. And if CIBC is the bank that you want to open with, make sure that you simply send me a quick email and say, Dave, this is where my postal code is. I prefer this branch in this particular mall. It's walking distance from me. We can come in. These are the timing. Then I can actually go in, and because I can actually book an appointment for you at that particular branch with an advisor and have a small meeting with them and say, you know, really touch upon all these questions and, you know, go over, attach the newcomer offer to their account, and really make it a more comfortable experience.
Well, that's fantastic. So they actually have to have credit history to get a credit card.
In the no, in the beginning, no, they just get it based on the newcomer program.
That's fantastic. Yeah. That's fantastic. But what if they don't have permanent residence? Can they open up a bank account or get a credit card?
That's a great question. I think I'll have to take that away and answer that. But in my understanding, as long as they're not on travel visa, they should be able to open an account.
Okay, so if they're not a visitor, but they're
that's correct.
Permitters,
that's correct. Yes, they will be able to.
Just a quick question. So I do have an answer because I did it with
yes,
my mother. You can open up the visa. I mean, as long as you have a visitor's visa, you can open up the account. But because I'm actually South Korean, we can come to Canada for 6 months without the visa. So in that case, we don't open up the account because technically you don't have a visa. We just have a stamp. In this case, they don't. But if you have actual visa permit, like a permit, like visitor's permit on your passport, and we go through the AML department, anti-money laundering, and after they approve us using foreign IDs and foreign identification and permit, and they allow you to open it, and it's a limited, so it's not like you're gonna get full benefit on your checking account, such as the overdraft or something. You're not gonna get those, but you can get a basic checking account that you can just put the money in, you can put the money out.
Okay.
Thank you. You know, that was great.
Because you know, there are many people who don't require visas to come in. Visa actually doesn't give you status in Canada. Visa is just for certain people from certain countries to allow them to enter. And like you said, a lot of people are from non-visa requiring countries like South Korea, and they don't need a visa to come to Canada. So you're saying those people who don't require visas aren't able to open up an account in Canada?
At the beginning, yes. So what happened to my mother is that when she extended her visitor permit, and they actually send us the permit, and we use that permit able to open up the account after.
So if someone has a visitor record, then they can do it.
But the other thing is there's exceptions. I actually seen it at the branch. This is not 100%, but I want to just throw the idea that bank does a lot of case by case. Okay. So I actually seen people open up the account without the visitor permit, even though they're visiting Canada.
Yeah.
So it always depends on anti-money laundering department, and there's another process in the branch that makes the exception too. Whenever they give us the approval, then they can open up the account. So this one's actually a little bit difficult because everybody's actually really different on these matters. Okay. But I can share that it's not. I want to mention it's not impossible because actually my mother did it. So this actually my mother went through to do it. So and that's actually one other thing that I want to throw it. And the second thing is that similar question I just think of it is, what about the credit card? So even for myself, when I was a student permit in Canada, when I study here, and I was able to open up the credit card with MBNA. They do offers the credit card. And the CIBC had a credit card for students as well in the past. Not anymore at this point, but if always you can come to the bank, show your case, then we always able to make an exception based on the client's case, and they're able to get it. So don't think that as, you know what, I'm not gonna try because you guys are just no is no. But there's no such a thing in the bank because everybody's are different. That's why we don't say that anymore. We changed the always acronym, but until a few years ago, we call that banking fits your life. So because everybody's are different. So everything you come up, you explain to us, we can get it done. But just make sure you have to give us the time though. Because my mother takes close to about 4 weeks to open up the account. Because we need to get approved. So it's not like a one-day thing for Canadian. So make sure you plan ahead and show your case and explain to us, and we'll find the best way to get it done, as long as you can give us the time. But if you believe that I need it like tomorrow, yeah, that's actually the impossible thing that we can do.
Okay.
Very good. Excellent. I think there's one question here from Chanela about the TFSA RRSP plan for those of us who do not have a permanent residency yet. So if you are two ways, so with RRSP and TFSAs, if your ties with Canada is going to be not that significant, like if you feel that there is a chance that you may not continue, then maybe these are not the most comfortable areas of saving. But you can have which are called, so anything like RRSP, TFSA, these are called registered accounts. What that means is that they are registered with the Canada Revenue Agency. But if you are looking at opening another saving account, you can have your saving account in any way. Then you could consider what kind of savings you want to have or what kind of growth vehicle you want to invest in. So for instance, do you want a return on your money as interest? Do you want it as dividends? So dividends are, if you invest in a Canadian company that gives you Canadian dividends, they are more tax friendly rather than investing in a company which gives you a foreign dividend. So there are those nuances that you can maybe consider on the non-registered side. But if you're feeling that if your ties with Canada is not going to be that permanent, then maybe it is better to hold off a little bit, and then once you have an answer, then go from there for the registered plans.
So the RRSP and TFSA, though, if someone were to say, like they're currently workers and they're on their way to get permanent residence, would they be able to access those?
Yeah, they can definitely access that. There is a, if you all are interested, there is an excellent article that we have. I can share that as well. It tells you how to navigate in case your ties with Canada comes to an end.
That's fantastic. So you know what, Dave, if you send that to me, I'll send that out and we'll share our slides from this presentation to you all.
Perfect, yes.
And if you, like you said, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us. You know what, Dave, you're like, you actually will drive around the city to meet with people. That's what I call incredible service. That's fantastic.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
And Mino, thank you for that input. I will use your mother's case to really help other clients who can, benefit from that as well. So
Yes,
thank you.
because you know what, because I didn't really believe it too. But one of the funny thing is that because I assume basically that it's not possible,
Yeah.
and then like I had an off chance that able to chance to one of the branch manager that I'm working for, and she's like, oh, just bring it in, bank, how bank works, and just bring it on. We will explain to the department, and maybe see what happened after. Like, there's no harm to try.
Sure.
So we tried it, and it actually worked.
It worked. Thank you.
So that was a huge surprise for me. So that I want to bring it up here. That make sure don't assume anything.
Yeah.
I will say everything is possible, but it's just sometimes the bank do make a condition that is case by case.
For sure.
So don't get scared of the case by case. A lot of time it ends with the positive.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of situations where people are here, they don't have a work permit, but they are allowed to work. There are conditions where they are allowed to work and they're actually working and they're getting a salary and they don't have a work permit, but they're on visitor status.
Okay.
Or, a lot of people are stuck here because of COVID. And
That's
it's
true.
right now 6 to 7 months to extend their status, and they have implied status, so they're legally in Canada. And to be in Canada for a year or two without just hiding your money without a bank account is something there. So that would be really good if there is a policy,
Way to.
where people can say, oh, I can go to CIBC and put my money in there and open up an account. That would be great. Well, you know what, guys? We are out of time today.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your fantastic questions. Dave and Miho, it was great talking with you, and thank you for all the valuable information you've given us today.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I'll share the deck with you as well. Take
Wonderful.
care.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Stay
Bye.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.